Coming to you from a cozy little condo high atop Old Fourth Ward, Atlanta. Welcome to The Ron Show on America One Radio. Here's your host, Ron Roberts.
All right, an electric first day at the Democratic National Convention. We will have some highlights for you in just a little bit. First things first, I want to start with a story that we've been following for quite a while now. The MAGA 3 takeover of the Georgia Elections Board, and it provided a little bit of a mixed bag of results on Monday. For me, the most notable action or inaction taken by the State Election Board was them deciding not to invoke themselves in one matter and over-invoking themselves in another. They first rejected any widespread use of paper ballots for this upcoming election, something that we've had guest Marilyn Marks on several times from the Coalition for Good Governance. She has explained the ease with which everyone at the county level and throughout the state of Georgia could revert to using hand-marked paper ballots without expense or much need for training. The scanning equipment in place where you vote and at the county offices are already set to read hand-marked paper ballots, but Brad Raffensperger has decided long ago that he'd prefer to stick with Dominion voting, even after the Coffee County breach said that there was a software upgrade that he was going to be implementing statewide that would make sure that everything's up to date and everything's secure. I have my doubts. Many people also have their doubts, obviously. And listen, this is not even a left wing or right. This is a bipartisan problem. This is what's so funny about what the State Election Board has done and the Secretary of State's office in the last 2 to 4 years. You've got bipartisan support for things that you didn't think we could get people together on, and then you've got issues like the paper ballot situation. Again, Democrats in large part don't want to rock the boat. We've had Marilyn Marks. We've talked about this. They don't want to go back and look at 2020. And in fact, Chris Carr decided to punt. The Attorney General decided to punt on the State Election Board's efforts to have him and his office relitigate Fulton County again in 2020, essentially citing that they don't have the authority to tell him what to do. That if they want to investigate it, I mean, this letter is long, that if they want to investigate it, it's up to them. And to me, that's kind of scary too. Anyway, it's just funny to watch how the State Election Board is overreaching, especially when it comes to dictating a former ministerial duty of certifying at the county level. Now they're trying to give broad expansion of rights at the county level to nitpick and review. Never mind the fact that the state law requires a deadline for certification in order for the votes to be counted and to assess winners and losers. David Wickert at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution reporting the State Election Board on Monday rejected calls to implement widespread use of paper ballots filled out by hand in the November election. Election integrity advocates asked the board to authorize the statewide use of hand-marked paper ballots, citing concerns about the security of Georgia's Dominion voting system machines. I'm just asking you to move to secure our voting system before the most important election in my lifetime. That is a Tea Party activist, Debbie Dooley. She, of course, proposed the rule. Do you believe? I'm sitting here saying I kind of see where a Tea Party activist should have some concern about this. We may disagree about why there is concern, but trust me, we both agree that there's concern. The board unanimously rejected 2 similar rules calling for the use of hand-marked paper ballots. Among other things, board members said they lack the authority to implement sweeping changes to the way Georgians cast their ballots. They lack the authority to implement sweeping changes to the way we cast our ballots, but they do not hesitate to invoke authority that doesn't exist to implement sweeping changes to the way Georgia County elections officials certify counting of ballots. Is irony not so self-evident here? This quote, and I'm not specifically mad at this one guy in this case, but that they're unanimous in this viewpoint is kind of, I don't know, hypocritical. The legislature in Georgia has put their trust and confidence in these Dominion machines, said board chairperson John Ferrier. I don't think it's the place of this board to go against the legislature. This board seems to think it is their place to go beyond the legislature, though. Some Republicans and Democratic election security advocates, according to David Wickert, have long objected to Georgia's Dominion machines, which print ballots after voters choose candidates on touchscreens. We get the QR code that is an assemblage of our decisions, I guess. Security experts have found the machines are vulnerable to hacking that could switch votes, though the chance of such manipulation is remote. There is no evidence the machines have been manipulated during an election, though Coffee County election officials, David Wickert writes, allowed conspiracy theorists to copy confidential election files in early 2021. That led to criminal charges against 4 people in the Fulton County election interference case, 2 of whom have pled guilty. Wickert continues, Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger plans to upgrade the Dominion software to address the vulnerabilities, but he said it could not be done before the 2024 election, a position that has drawn plenty of criticism, especially since, again, he's doing the statewide tour, testing the county officials and their software and the machines and their tabulation efforts. Like, while you're there, why can't we just kind of do a little thumb drive? Is that what we're doing now, thumb drives? State law allows local election officials to deploy paper ballots as a backup in emergency situations, though. The board has previously cited a power failure that disables voting machines as such an emergency. Would not the potential for widespread hacking not be such an emergency? Would there not be concern about the Coffee County breach creating such an emergency? David Wickert continues, in similar rules proposed to the board, Dooley and election security advocate Marilyn Marks, Coalition for Good Governance, said concerns about the Dominion machines amount to an emergency that should be addressed by using paper ballots to ensure the integrity of election results. Their proposed temporary rules would have expired in July 2026. Marks said the board has the authority to act to address the concerns about the Dominion system, saying, the General Assembly, in its wisdom decades ago, said if the primary method of voting is impaired, there has to be a backup. It only makes sense. She has been on this show several times in the last few weeks and said just as such. Janelle King, on the board, however, doubted that questions about the security of voting machines were akin to power failures under state law. We're altering how the election is being conducted, King said of Dooley's proposed rule. That is outside the purview of the state election board. Again, self-awareness on that board, clearly lacking. As I mentioned in other election board news, Attorney General Chris Carr rebuked their efforts to again relitigate the Fulton County election results of 2020. Carr's letter, according to the Politically Georgia podcast in the AJC today, means an attempt to reinvestigate the recount is going nowhere after the Secretary of State's office already completed its own inquiry, and former President Donald Trump's allies were furious. DeKalb GOP Chair Marcy McCarthy. Chris Carr, you promised to investigate voter fraud, but when Georgia's state election board called on you to act, you chose deflections over integrity. She posted that to her social media. Board member Janice Johnson, one of 3 Republicans on the board, lauded by Trump at his recent Atlanta rally, had sought to revive the case by sending it to the Attorney General's office. She also wanted further review of claims that there were 17,852 missing digital ballot images and missing verification documents from 10 ballot scanners. I would like nothing more than to find the missing documents, Johnson said at a board meeting earlier this month. This is about the data. This is about the documents, nothing more. This is about the proper counting of votes. Chris Carr said, it's not your job to tell me to do that. There were some former Republican state election board members, however, who applaud what Carr's decision means. Multiple investigations were completed. The matter has been legally resolved, according to Bill Duffy, Matt Mashburn, and Ed Lindsay in a joint statement. If the state election board rejects the proposed monitors or attempts to reopen the closed matter, they jeopardize the implementation of those monitors in the upcoming elections. Additionally, according to CNN, also covering the meeting yesterday, the election board passed a rule giving local election officials additional power to investigate ballot counts before certifying the results, a move critics say could inject chaos into the 2024 election. Boy, this board is just chef's kiss, and delay the state's official vote count. The rule for reconciliation prior to certification will allow for a hand recount of votes to ensure, quote, the total number of ballots cast does not exceed, quote, the total number of persons who voted, according to the language of the rule. Problem with that is when you have so many measures on a ballot, you're not always going to have everybody participating on every measure on the ballot. Anyway, the article. County elections officials will now be allowed to investigate any possible discrepancies. Oh my God. That could take days. Again, there are some things that I just, if I don't know the two candidates or I'm ashamed to admit this. I don't always do my research on the hundreds of options that are on a ballot sometimes in a general election. Especially in the primaries, I don't do that either. It's like, if they're both Democrats and I don't know either, and I just sometimes don't come in fully stocked with the information and bypass it. So does that mean now, because the numbers aren't going to all mesh, that any county election official is going to say, whoop, stop, we got to investigate that? That's a recipe for chaos. Back to the article. The vote was carried 3-2 by the 5-member board. The proposal was submitted by Sally Grubbs, the chair of the Cobb County Republicans, who told CNN she believes her county's 2020 presidential election results were inaccurate without providing any evidence to her claims. Now, for her part, she says she denies that the rule is about trying to delay certification of the 2024 results. She just says, we have to have assurances as Georgians that what we see printed on our ballots is exactly how they balance. And the only way to do that is by handwritten affiliation at the precinct level. I would have said handmarked paper ballots, but anyway. She said that in support of the rule during the public comment portion of the hearing. The rule would provide a guardrail to ensure that for each one person, there will only be one vote. I mean, here's the thing. If you have 12,230 people show up to vote and you have 12,232 votes, maybe you've got a concern. But if you have 12,130 people vote and 12,109 results, there's going to be a discrepancy. Does that also mean? See what I'm saying? Back to CNN. The rule change comes amid intense scrutiny of 3 Republican state election board members whom critics believe are making it easier to contest the election results if former President Donald Trump once again comes up short in Georgia. Well, yeah. Ugh, what a mess. What wasn't a mess? Night 1 of the Democratic National Convention. We have the highlights, including Georgia Senator, Reverend Senator Raphael Warnock, blowing the stage up last night. I mean, not literally, figuratively. Stand by. This show has a website, by the way, ronshowatl.com. I post all of the podcast show notes every time we do one of these bad boys, so that you can go back and review what it is that I'm reading or wherever I'm getting audio from. When I'm mangling quotes, sometimes it happens. Typos happen too, though, and so that kind of hurts my efforts at not mangling quotes. The Georgia Recorder Stanley Dunlop also reporting from the Georgia Elections Board meeting yesterday, and noticed that the folks at Fair Fight Action slammed the Georgia Election Board's new rule, letting local county elections officials nitpick and nuance over numbers that may not match up, which is going to happen when you have multiple ballot measures. But I guess they're just fixated on the one election, the one at the very top of the ballot, right? That's what I'm guessing. Because what if there's a congressional issue? What if there's a county school board issue? This is just a can of worms being opened up left and right. Anyway, Fair Fight slammed the new rules, according to Dunlop, claiming it was crafted by Trump supporters who continue to undermine confidence in Georgia's 2020 presidential election results. Trump and his MAGA allies have taken over the Georgia State Election Board to try and give a veneer of legality to their illegal scheme to disrupt the certification of Georgia's 2024 election results. That statement from Fair Fight CEO Lauren Groh-Wargo. Many of Trump's key election denier allies and Republican Party operatives are behind these illegal, anti-freedom changes to Georgia's election rules, and it's all with the goal of helping Trump win the Peach State, even if he doesn't earn a majority of Georgians' votes. Stanley Dunlop continues. Last week, the Georgia State Election Board approved a new rule giving counties the opportunity to verify that the tabulation and canvassing were accurate and complete before certifying the results. The new rule makes certification a mandatory process prior to the election results being verified by the Secretary of State's office. The actions of the newly constituted election board was described as a, quote, mess by Georgia GOP Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger after the 3 conservative members held a July meeting that came under fire for violating the state's open meetings law. Tyndall Ghazal questioned the decision to make significant rule changes at the same time counties are accepting absentee ballot requests for the upcoming November 5th general election. It is a mess, right? We can't be making these changes at the last minute, Ghazal said. This is exactly what undermines confidence in elections. Ghazal, of course, sits on this election board, but obviously is in the minority when the votes are counted. Honestly, the solution for this, and I think I heard, was it Paulding County? I think it was the Paulding County lady on the news clip we aired yesterday. Like, it would probably help if these board members actually, I don't know, volunteered and worked. Like, first of all, you should work at a polling place. Like, work at a polling place. I'm not saying that they haven't. I'm saying do it now with the system in place, the system in use throughout the state of Georgia. Sit at a busy polling place, watch how it happens, and then go to a county office where the votes are tabulated. Just see how it happens. Watch how it happens and tell us what you see that's wrong. And, now that everything's cameraed up and there's, things done in triplicate and you've got machines doing, we use machines. And by the way, go to the bank. Bank tellers use machines to count money. Why? Because humans are flawed. We're flawed people. We don't do math too good. Not all of us, anyway. But even the best of bean counters are going to get it wrong from time to time, which is why they double check and sometimes triple check their numbers. Yeah, I guess when it comes to legalities, going back to Chris Carr deciding, listen, I'm not redoing Fulton County again. And just from a strictly legal standpoint, I'm going to defer to him on that because I'm not a lawyer. He's the Attorney General. He probably knows this stuff a little bit better than I do. Okay, definitely. I defer to his wisdom on that, but I kind of wish he had just said, all right, you know what, fine, let's do it one more time. Go ahead and get it over with. Do it one more time. And then when things either did or didn't work out or did or didn't change the result, then what? The thing to remember about this is, even if there were some out, first of all, what is it, 17,800 and some, is that the assertion? There's the assumption that like all 17,800 and so ballots cast that are either undercounted or not counted or whatever, like they would all go to Donald Trump and somehow that would overturn Georgia's result. Okay, first of all, if that were to happen, it's unlikely in Fulton County. That's Atlanta. That's, it's a very blue county. If that were to happen, okay, fine. Then Trump gets the electoral votes. You know what happens? It doesn't change the result of the 2020 election. But that wouldn't happen anyway. There's a strong chance that by a 10,000 to 7,000 margin, that the margin of defeat for Donald Trump would actually grow, right? By 3,000 votes. Even if it were 9-8. Even if it were evenly split. They're just, the likelihood that the 17,000 or so batch of undercounted or not counted, if that is legitimate, would somehow alter the overall state's election results are so minuscule. There's just no way that you're going to sit there and say, wait, we found 17,800 Fulton County ballots that weren't counted. We'll count them. If that's legit, fine, count them. There's no way in hell that by some margin that changes the 11,000, however many number of votes, what was the final tally? There's no way that batch of votes is going to change the outcome. But I say, and again, I kind of wish Chris Carr had just said, all right, fine, we'll do it. But he's recognizing state law and that he doesn't have the authority to do it. So he told the state elections board, go pound sand. Sorry, it's not your job to tell me to do something that's not my job, that I cannot do. Okay. Besides, it's been investigated several times. Overseen by state officials who are all Republicans. It's time, and Republicans have been saying this, it's time for the Trump folks to move on from 2020 and focus on getting this right in 2024. And the state election board has given a mixed bag and a lot of gumming up at the county level that's going to make the 2024 counting process, if not the election process altogether, a mess. And Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, he's not immune from being called out on this too. I know a lot on the left want to, he was the good guy, stood up to Trump. He's actually made a big mess of this as well. First of all, stubbornly sticking to a Dominion voting system that we know because of the Coffee County breach, software was taken, stolen, has been seen by God knows who, God knows where. But then he opens up this website that allows people with just some simple information. My best friend in college, Sonia, I know her social security number. It's just a weird number, the way the numbers pattern out, I just remember it. I could pull her off the voting rolls. I'm not going to do it, obviously. But what if I were so partisan and she and I didn't agree politically? Yeah. And then she shows up to vote and she's got to ask for a provisional ballot and then get all that dealt with. It could take weeks to get her situation dealt with and her vote to count or not get counted. And if election results change weeks later, who do you think is going to squeal like a little MAGA pig? It's The Ron Show. Back after this.
This is The Ron Show on America One Radio.
Last night one of the Democratic National Convention in Chicago, and I'm not going to sit here and have sour grapes because they decided not to choose Atlanta for that. Honestly, traffic would have been a mess, right? Anyway, Chicago looking good. The United Center decked out. The place is rocking and rolling last night. So I'll get to Reverend Senator Raphael Warnock's statements. Man, he lit the place up, blew the roof off the place. I thought Joe Biden actually went a little long. In fact, I know he went a little long. His speech was almost as long as his presidency. My God. And I get the wanting to, the desire to litigate your term, but I think history is going to smile fondly on Joe Biden years down the road. And we've talked at great length about all the accomplishments. President Biden was doing what he could to make the case that his presidency was and has been a success, but also how much of a role Vice President Kamala Harris, the nominee of the Democratic Party, how large of a role she played in those successes. And that's all fine and well. Substance was there. Style, however, I really felt like President Biden was yelling a lot. Like he was like very loud, yelling. And for me, the best part of Joe Biden last night was the warm embrace that the arena gave him. It was touching. Oh my gosh, his daughter Ashley beforehand. And, he's so stoic. Like I'm one of those people, I want to see Joe Biden cry. I do. I want to see him. And he did tear up a little bit. And it got me teared up a little bit too. Just a lovely night. But I want to focus first on, honestly, one of my favorite moments of the Democratic National Convention last night is kind of one that is being not swept under the rug, kind of off the radar a little bit. How about U.S. Olympic gold medal winning men's basketball coach and Golden State Warrior head coach Steve Kerr? Listen to this.
Please welcome 9-time NBA champion and coach of the 2024 Olympic gold-winning men's basketball team, Steve Kerr.
Thank you.
Former Chicago Bull, by the way.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I mean, he's no Hulk Hogan, but...
It is so fun to be back here in the United Center. And as you guys know, a lot of good stuff has happened in this building, especially in the 90s. You young people, Google Michael Jordan and you can read all about it.
Has it been that long?
So there was an amazing vibe in this building back in those days. And I feel that same winning spirit here tonight. So the last time I was in a packed basketball arena was in Paris, France. 9 days ago, some of the best players on earth, 12 incredible American men, came together to win Olympic gold. And the next night, I was back in that same building watching 12 more of the best players on earth, our incredible American women, do the same thing. And I cannot think of a better metaphor for what this country is all about than the way Team USA came together at the Olympics. We had players from across our wonderful country, players who have trained, fought relentlessly, shed tears trying to beat one another throughout their careers, joining forces to wear the red, white, and blue. And when we won, the American flag raised to the rafters, the national anthem playing, gold medals draped around the necks of our players, whose hands were held over their hearts. It was the proudest moment of my life. Thank you. Thank you. Now, I could never have imagined that a few days later I would receive an invitation to step into a different kind of arena. And so here I am. I know very well that speaking out about politics these days comes with risks. I can see the shut up and whistle tweets being fired off as we speak. But I also knew as soon as I was asked that it was too important as an American citizen not to speak up in an election of this magnitude. The reason I said yes to speaking here tonight is that as a coach and former player, as a husband, a son, a father, even a grandfather, and as an American, I believe in a certain kind of leadership. I believe that leaders must display dignity. I believe that leaders must tell the truth. I believe that leaders should be able to laugh at themselves.
Zing.
I believe leaders must care for and love the people they are leading. I believe leaders must possess knowledge and expertise, but with the full awareness that none of us has all the answers. And in fact, some of the best answers often come from members of the team. And if you look for those qualities in your friends or your boss or an employee or your child's teacher or your mayor, then shouldn't you want those same qualities in your president? And when you think about it that way, this is no contest. With Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, I see all those qualities. They have devoted their lives to serving other people. Whether Vice President Harris was defending her community in the courtroom, or Governor Walz was inspiring the next generation in the classroom, or on the field, for that matter. By the way, coach to coach, that guy's awesome. Although, I have to say, Coach Walz, way too much reliance on the blitz in '99 against Mankato East. You had a strong defensive line. I would have played more press coverage with your corners and then dropped the safeties into a Tampa 2. That's just me. Sorry. I wanted you to know how I feel every day of the NBA season. But listen, the joy, the compassion, the commitment to our country that we saw at the Olympics, that is what Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have. And it is what our country needs. Leadership, real leadership. Not the kind that seeks to divide us, but the kind that recognizes and celebrates our common purpose. Think about what our team achieved with 12 Americans in Paris, putting aside rivalries to represent our country. Now imagine what we could do with all 330 million of us playing on the same team. Not as Democrats, not as Republicans, not as libertarians, but as Americans who know the greatness of this nation doesn't come from any one of us, but from each of us doing our part to build a more perfect union. That vision is what this campaign is all about. It's why I'm here tonight. And it's why I'll be getting out every day to help people get out and vote on November 5th and elect Kamala Harris and Tim Walz as the next president and vice president of the United States. And after the results are tallied that night, we can In the words of the great Steph Curry, we can tell Donald Trump, night-night. Thank you.
Golden State Warrior and Olympic men's basketball coach Steve Kerr. Abortion, reproductive access, a key issue in this election cycle. And this was, to me, the most poignant moment of the night, other than the full embrace of the audience with President Joe Biden. This, to me, stole the show. First up were Josh and Kendall Zorowski sharing their story.
When you're expecting a baby, packing for the hospital should be a joyful moment. For us, it was different. We were told with 100% certainty we would lose our baby girl, Willow, and we were sent home. For 3 days, we waited until Amanda was sick enough to receive standard abortion care. Eventually, Amanda's temperature spiked. She was shaking, disoriented, and crashing. I don't remember what I threw into our bag that day, only that instead of welcoming Willow, I was hoping Amanda's life could be saved. I'm here tonight because the fight for reproductive rights isn't just a woman's fight. This is about fighting. This is about fighting for our families. And as Kamala Harris says, our future.
Every time I share our story, my heart breaks. For the baby girl we wanted desperately, for the doctors and nurses who couldn't help me deliver her safely, for Josh, who feared he would lose me too. But I was lucky. I lived. So I'll continue sharing our story, standing with women and families across the country. Today, because of Donald Trump, more than 1 in 3 women of reproductive age in America lives under an abortion ban. A second Trump term would rip away even more of our rights. Passing a national abortion ban, letting states monitor pregnancies and prosecute doctors, restricting birth control and fertility treatments. We cannot let that happen. We need to vote as if lives depend on it, because they do.
Next up is Caitlin Joshua.
2 years ago, my husband and I were expecting our second child. Our daughter, Lauren, couldn't wait to be a big sister. I was getting ready for her 4th birthday party when something didn't feel right. 2 emergency rooms sent me away. Because of Louisiana's abortion ban, no one would confirm that I was miscarrying. I was in pain, bleeding so much my husband feared for my life. No woman should experience what I endured, but too many have. They write to me saying, "What happened to you happened to me." Sometimes they're miscarrying, scared to tell anyone, even their doctors. Our daughters deserve better. America deserves better. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz will fight for reproductive rights and our freedom and our shared future.
And then there was this, Hadley Duvall.
Growing up, I was an all-American girl. Varsity soccer captain, cheerleading captain, homecoming queen, and survivor. I was raped by my stepfather after years of sexual abuse. At age 12, I took my first pregnancy test, and it was positive. That was the first time I was ever told, you have options. I can't imagine not having a choice. But today, that's the reality for many women and girls across the country because of Donald Trump's abortion bans. He calls it a beautiful thing. What is so beautiful about a child having to carry her parent's child? There are other survivors out there who have no options. And I want you to know that we see you. We hear you. Kamala Harris will sign a national law to restore the right to an abortion. She will fight for every woman and every girl, even those who are not fighting for her.
Hadley Duvall and Caitlin Joshua and the Borowskis for sharing their story. Just an emotional, pivoting moment of the night. Then Governor Andy Beshear came out and gave a fantastic speech. I've got just a few more seconds on this segment, and then I want to give you some of the highlights of Georgia's own Reverend Senator Raphael Warnock blowing the lid off the building last night to cap, well, he didn't cap night one of the DNC. Obviously, President Joe Biden did, but to me, he was one of the highlights. We'll give you a taste of Reverend Senator Warnock's comments last night at the DNC to wrap the show. When The Ron Show returns on America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn. Final segment of The Ron Show. I feel bad. Like, I've only got like 7.5 minutes, and I've got like 13 minutes of Reverend Senator Warnock I can't squeeze in here. Also got to give Hillary Clinton her due, man. She had some fantastic jabs last night.
As a prosecutor, Kamala locked up murderers and drug traffickers. She will never rest in defense of our freedom and safety. Donald Trump fell asleep at his own trial, and when he woke up, he made his own kind of history. The first person to run for president with 34 felony convictions.
Man. And then Hillary stood there while the crowd yelled, "Lock him up, lock him up."
But we also know, as Vice President, Kamala sat in the Situation Room and stood for America's values. I know what it takes, and I can tell you, as Commander-in-Chief, Kamala won't disrespect our military and our veterans. She reveres our Medal of Honor recipients.
Sing.
She won't be sending love letters to dictators.
Sing.
She will defend democracy and our Constitution and will protect America from enemies, foreign and domestic. Think about it. The Constitution says the president's job is to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Those are the words of our founders. Take care. Just look at the candidates. Kamala cares about kids and families, cares about America. Donald only cares about himself. On her first day in court, Kamala said 5 words that still guide her. Kamala Harris, for the people. That is something that Donald Trump will never understand. So it is no surprise, is it, that he is lying about Kamala's record, He's mocking her name and her laugh. Sounds familiar. But we have him on the run now.
Yeah, Hillary had her moment last night. I'm not a huge Hillary, but that was good stuff. And then Reverend Senator Raphael Warnock.
A nation besieged by a deadly pandemic and beset by the awful and divisive rhetoric of a man too small for the office entrusted him or the task set before him. The day after my January 5th election, he instigated an insurrection, a violent assault on our nation's capital and the peaceful transfer of power, all driven by the big lie. But behind the big lie was an even bigger lie. It is the lie that this increasingly diverse American electorate does not get to determine the future of the country. The lie and the logic of January 6th is a sickness. It is a kind of cancer that then metastasized into dozens of voter suppression laws all across our country. And we must be vigilant tonight because these anti-democratic forces are at work right now in Georgia and all across our country. And the question is, who will heal the land? And so here we are, America. Are you ready? Are you ready to stand up in this moral moment? Stand up for the best in the American covenant. Elections are about the character of a country. And we must decide, again, we are the latest generation of Americans who get to decide what kind of country we want to be. And we must choose between the promise of January 5th and the peril of January 6th. A nation that embraces all of us or just some of us. Donald Trump's America is the America of January 6th. People who have no vision traffic in division. He does not know how to lead us, and so he wants to divide us. America, make no mistake, Donald Trump is a plague on the American conscience. He is a clear and present threat to the precious covenant we share with one another. And yes, I saw him holding the Bible and endorsing a Bible as if it needed his endorsement. He should try reading it. It says, do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. He should try reading it. It says, love your neighbor as yourself. It says, inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these, you have done it also unto me. I choose the American covenant. E pluribus unum, out of many one. I choose January 5th. I choose a nation that provides a path for ordinary people and gives every child a chance.
Then he pivoted to praise President Joe Biden and Kamala Harris at Joe's side. Fantastic speech. I'll give that to you in full in the show notes at RonShowATL.com. Have a great day. Day 2 of the DNC should be electric. We'll be here to cover it tomorrow on America One Radio and Progressive Voices via TuneIn.